My name is Joe Bruckner, and I have the honor of being here with Mr. Jim Starnes. We're in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and interviewing Mr. Starnes in connection with the Library of Congress Veterans History Project. And we're gathering this information in conjunction with the Atlanta History Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Mr. Starnes, I really appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you, Joe. Good to be here.
And we'd like to start out by just getting some basic information. Would you give me your complete name and current address?
Yes, James L. Starnes. I'm usually called Jim. At 2309 Springhouse Circle, Stone Mountain, Georgia, 30087.
And when and where were you born?
I was born in Little Rock, Arkansas. My father was just passing through, I think. We didn't stay there very long.
What is your birth date?
Birthday is February the 12th, 1921.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
My family moved to Atlanta, back to Atlanta. Both my mother and my father were from here. When I was about 6 years old, my father's job was required a lot of traveling, so the first 6 years we sort of bounced around from places like St. Louis, Missouri, Des Moines, Iowa, Atlanta, and Jacksonville, Florida, and things like that. But I started school here, actually in Decatur, Georgia, which is not far from where I live now. And stayed here until I went into the Navy.
Did you go to Decatur High School?
Went to Decatur High School, graduated in 1938, and I went to Emory University. I tell my friends and family that I really went to Emory because it was the closest place I could hitchhike to. And so I didn't know what I wanted to be. I sort of favored Georgia Tech because they had more publicity of football teams, things of that sort. But I started at Emory for the class of 1942 and the business course. And things changed. After 2 years of college, I was working because I needed to earn some money to pay my tuition to go to school. So I was working up at the theater in Decatur. And a good friend of mine came in one night. We worked usually until about 11 o'clock at night, and said that he had just joined the Navy. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Tell us about it. So he was saying that he had heard that the Navy was starting a V7 course, which was similar to some things they'd done in the past. But in any event, college students that had had at least 2 years of college would be eligible to apply. And there'd be a 4-month course based on the Naval Academy course, at the end of which, if passed, you could get awarded a commission. So I was real excited about that. Just on the spur of the moment, it sounded good to me here in the summer of 1940. And so I thought, well, my biggest problem, if I want to do this, is to convince my parents. And I lived with my parents. So I called my father about 11 o'clock that night and said, Pop, I've got some interesting thing I want to talk to you about, so don't go to sleep till I get home. So when I got in about midnight, he said, well now, son, if you're thinking of joining the Navy like our neighbor Henry Harris, the answer is no. So this became my first experience in persuasive ability. So I guess he had had thoughts of what he had read and heard about, that a bunch of drunken sailors is not what he wanted his son to do. So I just had to talk to him about the Navy took the young men and young boys and made men out of them. and I was going to be an officer and a gentleman, and this is what I wanted to do. So the next day, I was off down to Georgia Tech, where they were putting together the applicants, and I signed up for the first B-7 camp.
Huh.
So in about, well, I guess in about a month, in July, I was off to see the world. And it happened so quickly, but that's sort of been the story of my life. I've made decisions quickly. My choices have turned out to be good.
How did your mother handle that?
Oh, it's art with her.
Good.
She was easy to convince, I guess.
Well, tell us where you went from that point.
Well, the first thing we went to New York, where we had to sign up and register, and we went to, we were going to be going aboard the USS Illinois, which was an old battleship that had been converted into a barracks. All the superstructure had been removed, and they put a roof on it, looked like, we call it Noah's Ark. And, but that's where we'd be for basically 4 months. But the first month we were going to go to sea. So we went aboard the USS Wyoming, which was another old battleship, and went down to Guantanamo. So we got to see Gitmo before the world knew too much about Gitmo. Yeah. But it was a naval base, and it was awfully hot and awfully humid and not very comfortable, and we had to do a lot of hard work, not vacation style. We used to say that after being at Gitmo for several weeks, when we died, if we went to hell, we'd start as sophomores. That was a pretty hellish place. And then we came back to New York, spent 3 months, and very intensive education. We go to class 6 days a week and get off on Sunday, provided we had made the tree. And they graded us on a 2.5 system, and 2.5 below that was, you couldn't go ashore, you were on the tree. 4.0 was the tops. And we studied all the courses that they teach at the Naval Academy, seamanship, navigation, everything. And we would start off the day, every day, with a quiz. And the quiz was based on what we had the day before. So we had to stay up to date. And that was a real interesting 3 months. And November came, and we were ready to graduate, and fortunately I had made satisfactory grades, and I was awarded the commission as Ensign USNR, United States Naval Reserve. So the customary naval tradition and policies, we were given 30 days leave to go home. We had the option, I might say at that time, to take our commission and go in the Navy, or take our commission and stay on reserve. The draft had passed, draft act while we were there. The song was going around, "Goodbye dear, I'm off for a year." So it seemed to me, well, certainly like more fun to go in the Navy than to go back to college at that time. Yeah. My thought being that once this is over, I did want to come back and finish my education. So I opted to join the Navy, elected to take a commission and an assignment on the light cruiser USS Boise. And it was stationed in Long Beach, California, so my orders read to take a 30-day leave and then report to the Boise at the end of the 30 days. So I did that, and ended up in Long Beach at the end of December 1940. I got to see the Rose Bowl.
Did you?
I'd been so lucky.
Who played?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know either.
All I remember is the beautiful setting and the majesty of it, and it was just a beautiful thing. And you know, that was another choice and consequence that worked out real good.
Yeah.
Been invited to a party New Year's Eve party at one of the hotels with a bunch of friends. So at the hotel, I met a man that had an extra ticket to the hotel. And he said, any of you guys interested in going? And I said, you bet, I'd love to. And then the next few days we practiced on the ship, getting to know what to do. And I was assigned as navigation officer, assistant navigator. At that point in time, they sort of made specialists out of each of us. A typical naval officer would become a generalist and do everything. But they would say, you go here and you go there, and that's generally where we stayed. And we learned everything there was to learn. So early in January, we went to Pearl Harbor and joined the fleet. At that time, they were operating the fleet as the starboard fleet and the port fleet.
Now, what year was this? January of
40.
40. Okay.
1940.
Okay.
And so the starboard fleet would be at sea and the port fleet would be in port. And then after a couple of weeks, 10 days or something, we'd rotate and come back in port, and other parts would at sea. And what's interesting to me in retrospect is that the basic training that we went through all the time was to repel and attack from Japan. And we weren't going to let anybody get in there, except on the weekend. On Saturday at noon, we went ashore unless we had to watch, and we had liberty, fine. But we weren't trying to repel Japanese on the Sunday morning that it turned out to say.
Wow.
And knew about and came. So that was very interesting. I got introduced to the Officers Club, and I made a lot of good friends. And we were always at anchor in Pearl Harbor, which meant we'd go ashore, we'd have to get in the boat and go from the ship over to the landing. It worked out real good. We had about I think there were 4 of us, bought an automobile. As I recall, we paid $300 for an old Cadillac convertible. Boy, that was a doozy. We took that thing and drove it all around the island, and we had liberty. And in Hawaii, it rains a lot. So quite often we would be caught in the rain and have to jump out and put the top up. And so we had military exercises all worked out for that emergency situation. And then when we'd go at sea, well, our partners would take over the car. So we gave it some good. It was a lot of fun. I was 19 years old.
Pearl Harbor was a fun assignment, wasn't it, back then?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a great place to be. And then on early November, late November, about the middle of November, 1940, we were assigned as a military ship to take a convoy to China. And so we left, the Boise being the only combatant ship, with a bunch of, basically they were freighters to take supplies to China, but we were to go from Pearl Harbor to Manila. And I think we left there the 18th of November. So it was only about 3 weeks before Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. Wow.
And we had almost an uneventful trip. Of course, you know, in a convoy, your speed is the speed of the slowest ship in the convoy. So it wasn't a real fast trip, but we operated at wartime, ready in case anything else goes. The reason we were out there was that everybody expected that there could be hostility. The unusual thing, the only unusual thing that happened on that trip was one night, about dusk, we sighted a strange ship on the horizon. And we gave the signal for the foe, and no answer, so we knew it wasn't one of ours. And so we just was at what we call general quarters, everything manned, ready for action if it should occur. But that ship just circled us all night long. Never got any closer, never got any farther away, no communication. And then the next morning it was gone. And we continued. We found out later that that was a part of the task force going the opposite way toward Pearl Harbor.
Wow.
And, yeah,
Wow.
many of us have often thought, what if,
Yeah.
in one of those situations, what if we had been aggressive? What if they had made contact with us? You know,
Yeah.
but those are things you never know.
Yeah.
We arrived at Manila on the 5th of December. Admiral Hart, who was the commander-in-chief of the Pacific Fleet stationed in Manila, was convinced that war was imminent, but he thought Manila was going to be the target. I don't think many people really envisioned an attack on Pearl Harbor. So we got out of there the next day and left convoy ships there and headed down toward the south of the Philippines, towards Cebu. And it was there on the morning of the 8th, out there across the international date line, which is the 7th in Pearl Harbor. We were standing watch on watch. Every 4 hours we changed watch and we were ready for any kind of action. And I remember as I went up through the wardroom to the bridge for my 8 to 12 watch, someone coming down said, "Jim, oh boy, we're at war." And, well, that's what we thought could happen any time. So I went up on the bridge. I was assistant navigator. That was my watch at sea all the time on the bridge. And the captain and I were together so much of the time, we were pretty close. And he showed me an all-nav. It said the United States, no, he said a state of war now exists between the United States and the Imperial Empire of Japan. Carry out war plan, something like Charlie Able Baker. But that's all. We didn't know about Pearl Harbor. We didn't know what it did, instigated the war or why we were at war. We just knew we were at war.
Huh.
And the war plan that we were to carry out was something written in the book. You know, you try not to get in action. You do what you're told to do. And so we were cruising around in the Dutch East Indies, in Borneo for a while, and a few days, and just, I guess, sort of didn't know what to do with us. We just said, keep the boys in there until we need them.
Yeah.
But we still didn't know what started the war. That was December the 8th. On Christmas Eve, we were down in one of the ports in the East Indies, and some of us had the privilege to go ashore. So we're always anxious to get ashore. So we went ashore and met some pilots who had flown down from Pearl Harbor in their PBYs, which was the seaplanes. And that's when we heard about Pearl Harbor.
Oh.
So, it was
So you heard about it weeks after it happened?
weeks after that, on the 7th, 25th.
Gosh.
And then, unfortunately, in our cruising around, we ran aground and hit an uncharted shoal. And we used to said that win the contest, you know, you tear the bottom off of a light cruiser and send it in. So we had to try to get patched. And the Dutch East Indies is not the best place to send an American man of war to get the bottom patched.
Yeah.
But they tried. They put us in the dry dock, and we couldn't do it. So, as fortune would have it, we were sent to Bombay, India, for repair. So that was a nice winter of 42 to be at Bombay, and have tea time with the British aristocracy. Instead of drinking tea, we quite often had scotch and soda. But it was very critical days of the early days of the war, because British battleships, Prince of Wales, and one of the others was sunk, I think, close to Singapore. And we were witnessing a lot of refugees coming out of that part of the South Pacific. And so we were in India about a month and a half. I mean, I remember celebrating my 20th birthday in Bombay. And then they patched us up the best they could, and we were going to be sent back to the States to really be patched up. So we came back, I think it was about April when we finally left there. And we went back to San Francisco to Mare Island for repair. But we didn't get any leave. None of us were able to get off because it was just going to be a short time. And then we turned around and went back to the Pacific. And you know, we often think of World War II in the Pacific as bookends, so on Pearl Harbor and then the surrender. But there's an awful lot of concern in those early years of the war, whether or not we were going to prevail. And 42 was a critical year. And you know, we read now in history how our country was fighting a war in Germany, in Europe, and a war in the Pacific. And in the minds of a lot of people, the war in Europe was getting perfect. But understanding a little bit more now about why we did things, I read the history that Admiral King was very adamant that we put enough resources in the Pacific to not let Australia fall. All the troops from Australia were in Europe, so they were practically undefended. And this, apparently, from my understanding of history, is how Guadalcanal got into the picture, because that was the point that we had to control to keep the sea lanes open from the U.S. to Australia.
And Guadalcanal was fairly close to Australia, wasn't it?
Yes, yes, it's on the other side of the international date line, south of Australia. So our first assignment was to be a decoy. The Doolittle flight had already occurred, and that had been a situation really just to trying to put some fear in the minds of the Japanese that we could bomb Tokyo. And it was, you know, the administration said that the planes came from Shangri-La, unknown spot. But they thought if they're going to invade Guadalcanal, it would be best if we had the Japanese fleet not there. So the Boise was assigned to be a decoy, as if it were in the van of another Doolittle flight. So we went to Midway, and then from Midway, which is just close to Hawaii, we were instructed to take the Great Circle course to within 500 miles of Tokyo. Let them know we were there, and do everything we could to foster the idea that more planes are coming to borrow. And, you know, I can't speak with historical accuracy, but what I understand is that the ploy worked, and that a lot of the fleet at least headed back toward the northern waters, and we were able to, in August, go into Guadalcanal. Fortunately for us, nothing happened. All of us thought this was a suicide mission, and we were thinking the best we could hope for was to become prisoners. But it didn't. We launched our 2 planes. They carried 2 planes and catapulted, and they were to search and also to let the Japanese know we were there. And we lost the planes. We couldn't get them back. But
Did they get shot down, or did
we
you
don't know. Never did know, but they got lost apparently.
Yeah.
Never had any knowledge of what happened to them, but we broke all securities by turning our lights on, opening up radio, and everything.
So they knew you were there.
They knew we were there, and maybe our pilots tried to get back, maybe they didn't. But we circled there for several hours with our lights on and the searchlights looking, and then we turned 180 degrees and came back. And so it was a fortunate break. That was an interesting few weeks.
Yeah.
Then we went to Guadalcanal, went to the south of Guadalcanal down in the Ulithi Atoll, which was the base where a couple of other ships just north of Australia. And those were the days that we came very close to losing the war in the Pacific, because Guadalcanal had some disastrous naval battles. Salo, where we lost several battleships, one in Iron Bottom Bay, and it was very treacherous. And the Marines were hanging in there, but the Japanese were able to supply and refurbish a lot easier than we were. So in early October, we were told that the Tokyo Express, as they call it, which was combatant ships and supply ships, were coming down the slot, as they call it, between the islands, almost a nightly basis, the troops and supplies. And so we were in a task group with, I think, 4 cruisers and several destroyers. And we were given the assignment on October the 11th, 1942, that we had intelligence of the Air Force mainly had spotted the Japanese coming down the slot. Our mission was to stop the Japanese. So we proceeded to the Guadalcanal area, and about 11:30 that night we spotted the Japanese. Now, I've always wondered how things happen the way they do, but we had just recently come out of Mare Island, California, being repaired, and we had all the latest radar and sonic equipment and everything. The Salt Lake City, which had Admiral Scott in it, that was the flagship, they didn't. So as we approached the Japanese, we had spotted with radar, where the flagship, they still were looking. And so Captain Moran, our skipper, asked permission to open fire, and it was denied permission because Admiral Scott really didn't know what we would be shooting at. And then finally, when I think we closed to within about 2,000 yards, which is a couple of miles nautical, Captain Moran said open fire. And the Navy protocol gives to the commanding officer permission to do that if he fears his ship's in danger without approval from the higher command. So we opened fire. And when we did, it lit up the sky because we hit a ship, and the ship had damage, and then we got hit. And then it was just a really funny book. But we were the ones, then our forward magazine exploded, got hit by a torpedo. And we were on fire, and so most of the action was toward us. And we were pretty badly damaged. We were listing to start about 30 degrees. We had a complement, I think at the time, of around 1,000 officers and men. And we need a break, or is this okay?
Now you go ahead.
Okay. So we withdrew. I'm afraid we're going to say. But we withdrew from the battle and headed back toward Ulithi, which was down south of Australia. And our whole experience in that lasted about 20 minutes. But it was a decisive victory of stopping the coming down the slope. And we went back, and one thing I might recall is I was the navigating Boise at the time. And so, of course, the navigation around that part of the area was really what we call dead reckoning, just taking bearings off of known objects. And a bunch of us, as we were coming back toward Australia, were talking about how should they report the battle, what do you want to call it? And I showed them the chart, and I said, well, it was right off of Cape Esperance. So why don't we call it the Battle of Cape Esperance? So it's written up in the books.
So you're the one that came up with the name
Yeah,
for the battle?
I suggested it. Let me put in an interesting note, if it's entirely different from that. But about a year ago, a friend of mine that lives here knew that I had been on some engagements in that area. And he asked me if I'd like to look at a Life magazine he had dated January 1942. No, it was September. It was the end of the war, about the surrender. And I thought, well, I'd love to. So anyway, I took his magazine. It was a Life magazine that he had been a gratuitous gift from somebody, just that you might like this. But it was right after the end of the war. And it talked all about the surrender, but the big thing that he didn't know that I'd be interested in is a sheet. Another big ad by General Electric. And it talked about that they got something they could now tell us that they couldn't tell us previously. That they had come out with a radar that could be used, and it had first been installed on a ship, the Boise. Wow. And the Boise had used that in the Battle of Cape Esperance. It sunk 6 ships or something like that. Jeez. So this was a bonus to what this guy really thought I wanted, but that's just a side story.
At the time, did you realize that it was something that was new and innovative when you were on the ship?
Well, when we were having it installed in Mare Island, they said this is the latest thing. Yeah. You'd be one of the few. I never could understand, I never have understood why Admiral Scott was in a ship that didn't have the latest stuff. Yeah. Somebody made the wrong decision. But anyway, that was our Battle of Cape Esperance. So we left and went back to, this time we went to Philadelphia. So we had to go through the Panama Canal. And that was an interesting trip. All together during the war, I went through the canal 8 times.
Tell us about that trip. You said
4 times each way, but it's real ingenious the way we built that canal, because it goes up and down hills. And we had to go into these locks. And it's just like a dry dock. I mean, you go into a lock, it's empty of water, and it's just sitting in there on supports, and then they flood it, so it comes up to another level, and you go out, and you go to another lock, it's full of water, and you get in, and they lower it, and so that was interesting. So we went back to Philadelphia, and there we had to be practically rebuilt. So that was in the fall of 42.
What was the mood of the country when you went back to Philadelphia? I mean, what was their attitude towards the war?
Well,
Optimism, pessimism? Or?
everybody was patriotic. Everybody was, we're going to win the war. It seemed like everybody was working toward it. You know, Rosie the Riveter, Navy Yard was full of women, but it was a very positive. No, I mean, we didn't notice any discord. Different from the way things have been in various times since then. It was very patriotic. So, but we stayed there for about for several months, anyway. And then we noticed they were putting all the camouflage paint on us that they were using in the European theater. So we didn't take much to understand that we're not going right back to the Pacific, we were going to Europe. So we went to Europe for the invasion of Sicily. This was the beginning of the campaign. They had already been through North Africa and had survived that. And so we went into Algiers on the north coast of Africa. That was interesting, going through into the Mediterranean.
And tell us about that.
Well, it's just magnificent to see. My memory is fading now. What do you call it's the entrance to the
Straits of
Gibraltar? Rock of Gibraltar?
Straits of Gibraltar. Beautiful, beautiful. And you know, you got Europe on one side and Africa on the other side. But we just nice. Sort of vacation again in Algiers, and then we joined the group for the invasion of Sicily. And that was, well, we made a lot of mistakes. We shot down the whole fleet. They had a lot of our own planes and got misdirections, but all in all, we prevailed and went on for the invasion of Italy at Salerno. And this was where we first were introduced to the magnetic bomb that they were dropping. And it's radio guided. And it looked like it was almost impossible to dodge it. Because you zigzag and everything else and then guide that thing on you. So that was a new experience. And a lot of our landing ships were completely wiped out with that. Fortunately, we weren't, but it was just another place we had to dodge the bullet.
Now, was this artillery? Or were these dropped from the Luftwaffe or from?
No, they would drop, yeah, from their high-flying
Okay.
plane, and then radio guided to the target. And, so we stayed there until Italy had been secured, and then we came back, headed back to New York, back through the canal, back to the South Pacific. Went back to Ulithi, just north of Australia, and we really were just standing by to stand by. This is when the fleet was beginning to go the island hopping up toward Japan. And then I got my orders from the Boise. And my orders were to proceed to San Francisco and await for orders. So, as it happened, I was in the group that got on a Dutch freighter that left Ulithi for San Francisco. An interesting thing occurred aboard the ship, other than the fact that 3 or 4 of us played bridge every day. it happened that three of us were about the same skill, and one poor guy carried the burden of all of us. But every night the captain would come on and say, "This is Captain Rommel," and he'd make a few announcements, and then he'd invite every day 2 or 3 of our group up to have a beer with him. And so we went up one night to have a beer, and one of us said, "Captain Rommel, there's a famous German general in Africa. You have the same name." And he said, "He's my brother."
Really?
As it turned out, their philosophies were different. As he said, a lot of the Dutch were not Nazi. And he made it clear that he was not, would not have fought the Germans, but he was fighting the Japanese. But that was...
And he was Earl and Rommel's brother.
Yeah, it's his brother. So we got back to San Francisco, and I had a few days there just doing nothing. Wake up every morning and call the Navy office and say, "Anything for me? This is 095560. And not yet. And then I finally got the word that I was to report back home for 30 days of leave, and then to report to Newport, Rhode Island, to head up the navigation school. Sounded okay to me, and got me home for 30 days and so forth. So the navigation school at Newport, Newport's a famous training school, has been for a long time for the Navy, was to take crews and put them together for ships that were being built. We were building so many ships. And so when the ship was launched, they'd have a crew ready to put it in. And so I was to head up the school that taught all the navigators and like that. I was home on leave in June, and I felt like I was in on all the know when I said I wouldn't be at all surprised but on the 7th of June if we don't have a major invasion of Europe.
Really?
Taking the 7th Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
But it was the 6th of June.
Yeah.
And I had D-Day. But that was when D-Day occurred, and then shortly after that I went up to Newport. I thought I'd spend the rest of the war there, really. So when the invasion, they invaded Europe, and I did a couple of years up here, and it's pretty high cotton. So we worked 3 days and then have a day of duty, but it was just almost like going to work in the morning, coming home in the afternoon. I was pretty young and I had a lot of seasoned sailors coming in. And I told this one friend of mine, I said, you know, I'm a little intimidated to welcome this class of people who know a lot about this seagoing stuff and I do. He said, well, don't worry about it. He says, it's what you do when you get up to open a new class. You look around and you said, a lot of people in the Navy know more about navigation than I do. But I don't see any here. And said, then go ahead, you got it. So that was just fun. Until one day in November, the phone rang, and a friend of mine over at the department where they check people in and out said, Jim, old boy, you got your orders. That's it. I wasn't ready to leave. And I said, what are they? He said, well, you're to join the Missouri as the navigator. I said, well, that can't be a navigator of a capital ship like that, a commander. I'm just a lieutenant. And I said, that's already in commission anyway, isn't it? He said, yeah, your orders are to report. Usually your orders would be preceding a report, which would give you 7 days to pack your things and move your family. But mine was to report and to come out. So that meant I had to get my family to see if they could drive up and get my wife a job. and take them back, because I had to put a few things in a bag and go to New York. And when I got to New York, I found they were trying an experiment. The commander was to be the combat information officer. He was to move down in the hull of the ship to run the computers, well, they would have computers, but to run the radars and all of the intelligence equipment. And I was to be, of course, report to him, but I was to be the one on the bridge. Be responsible for the direction of the ship. So we had about 2 or 3 days in New York, and my family came down, and so I got to be with them another couple of days, and then we went off to the canal. And this was I left Newport on election day, November the 4th, I think, 44. And Roosevelt was elected this last term. So we went through the canal, arrived in Pearl Harbor Christmas Eve. And they welcomed us to the fleet, Merry Christmas. And then we left there and went directly to the Pacific. And we became part of the biggest armada, I guess, that had ever been put together. 12, 13 battleships and a lot of cruisers and 30 carriers, and they were still island hopping, but the objective was to invade Japan. So we were on the 19th of February, which was D-Day at Iwo Jima. We were offshore, bombarding the coast. Then later at Okinawa, we were partnerships there. For 3 months, we didn't go ashore. We were fueled by tankers, provisioned by supply ships, and we stayed at sea for over 3 months. And we were operating with the same ships, but they went from the 3rd Fleet to the 5th Fleet. Admiral Halsey would serve aboard our ship, it was the 3rd Fleet, and then in a month, 6 weeks or something, Admiral Mitchner, I think, Admiral McCain was aboard the 5th Fleet, and that was the grandfather of the most recent, the current senator. So we had fairly uneventful times. We shot at a lot of planes, a lot of planes shot at us. It was in April when the Japanese were really seeing that they were beat, but trying to not quit, that they had this massive flight of kamikazes. And April 8th, something like that, when I hit the Missouri. But it came down toward our starboard quarter, and of course we were shooting at it all the time with our 40mm gun, our 6-inch guns, and we hit it just before it hit us. So actually, the plane hit our stern, and half of it went in the water, and half of it came aboard ship. Half the pilot came aboard ship. We had some wounded, but no fatalities. But that's the only time we were really, with all the kamikazes hitting the carriers, everything around, that was the first time we'd been hit. And we used to facetiously say every time we'd see one, they'd say, the carriers are there, that's over there. But this was a massive attempt at the Japanese to use so many kamikazes that they could stop our fleet. But that didn't happen.
What was your feeling when you saw that kamikaze coming towards your ship?
Well, I was on the bridge. Captain was on the bridge. I say he and I were both trying to hide behind the conning tower so we wouldn't get hit. I felt like maybe I was pushing the captain out of the way so I could. But yeah, I was scared. Because that's what they wanted. They wanted to hit the bridge. But we dodged the bullet. You know, as I've read that Winston Churchill once said, the most exhilarating experience you can have is being shot at and missed. And so we were fortunate. I mean, I had some exhilarating experiences, but never got damaged. And I guess then we weren't really preparing for the invasion of Japan, but we knew it was going to happen. I've read since then more of the plans that they really had. It was to be 1st of November. But we didn't, I didn't, at least, I wasn't aware of that. And then the big surprise, the biggest surprise in the world was the 6th of August. And, I mean, that was the best kept secret that ever occurred in any kind of military operation. And the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. And so that was, of course, we thought, well, this is it. It's over. It can't possibly continue. And then on the 9th, they dropped another one. And of course, now, reading history, we know of some of the Japanese conflict that were having between the military and the imperial command, because the Potsdam Declaration had been issued on the 26th of July, and that was demanding total surrender. You know, to make a sidestep, back in 2005, they had the 60th anniversary of the surrender of Japan, and I went to Pearl Harbor, and 6 of my children got to go with me. And we were going to commemorate that anniversary. So we had a lot of press there. I was being interviewed by a lady from one of the Japanese newspapers. And one of the first things, of course, she wanted to know was what was my opinion of killing so many of the Japanese with the atomic bomb. I said, well, in my opinion, it's a shame we had to do that. But the Japanese could have stopped it. I said, the Potsdam Declaration asked for total surrender on the 26th of June. The bomb was made to use in Germany, but we never used it in Germany because Germany surrendered. If you accepted the Potsdam Declaration, it's another big what-if question. But anyway, that's the side point. So,
No, that's very interesting.
yeah, it's
Was that an emotional experience being there in Pearl Harbor in 2005 for you and your comrades?
you mean in Tokyo.
No, your visit.
Your
Pearl
visit to
Harbor.
Pearl Harbor.
Oh, yes, that was tremendous. I mean, to be back in Pearl Harbor where I'd been a year before the war started, almost a year, and see those same sights, and to be back aboard the Missouri. To stand really where I had stood 60 years ago.
Wow.
That was a tremendous experience. You know, I've enjoyed several commemorations of events. I was in Bremerton, Washington for the 50th anniversary when the Missouri was in dry dock there. I was in Annapolis for the 40th anniversary when the Missouri was in the Chesapeake Bay. And, you know, I may go back to Pearl Harbor in 5 years and see the 70th.
Good. I hope you
It's
do.
moored there at Fort Allen as a museum.
Yeah,
So, sure. But after the bombs were dropped, we thought, well, the war's going to be over. Then we heard that the Missouri was to be the site of the final surrender. And you know, we were surprised because nobody told us they were going to do that. But we shouldn't have been. I mean, Truman was president then, and that was his home state. And actually, when he and Margaret launched the ship, Margaret broke the champagne, I think, and Harry said, someday the mighty Mo will sail into Tokyo Bay with all guns blazing, and the war will be over.
Huh.
So his prophecy came true, but the guns weren't blazing because the conflict is.
Yeah.
So we got started getting ready for a big event that had never occurred before. And all of us thought, well, we'll have to see where we packed our white uniforms, because I'm sure we'll dress white. Get our sabers out and polish those, because we'll certainly dress for this. But then we got the word from MacArthur. He said, we fought them in our undress khakis, and we'll take their surrender the same way, which was open collar, no tie. So we used that, and then we took the whole fleet, and then Mohazi was aboard our ship as the third fleet. So we went into Sagami Bay, Sagami 1, I guess they call it, which is sort of opposite Tokyo Bay, and Sagami Bay is over here, and all the land in between, and Mount Fujiyama, so you can see it from both sides. But that's where the whole fleet was for 2 or 3 days while the preparations were being made for the surrender. And I was navigator of the ship, and people have asked me how I happened to be chosen to be officer of the deck that day, and I said, well, it wasn't me, it was a position. The navigator is always officer of the deck at the special events in the general quarters. So it became my job to sort of keep up with what was being planned to happen, so I could know what I was supposed to do. And of course we had the admiral aboard, we had his chief of staff, we had our captain, we had all of our executive officers and staff. And they were making the plans of how to get all those people aboard the Missouri. And we would be anchored out in Tokyo Bay. And so they decided to send destroyers at various points to pick up the paparazzi, because they had all of, and to pick up all of the allies. We had the allies of all the countries, flag officers. And so I was told, I was given the order, this is what we're going to do now. And then the Japanese were picking them up in a destroyer, and all the others would bring a destroyer on the port side, the Japanese would bring on the starboard side. So we brought the group, first the MacArthur, and Nimitz was already aboard, and so we had Halsey as the commander of the 3rd Fleet. Nimitz was a 5-star admiral, Halsey just 4. And he was commander of the Pacific. And then MacArthur was coming aboard as 5-star general. He was to be the supreme commander after the surrender. So we brought them all aboard, and I had my assistant OD, who was Doug Plate. He later became Admiral Plate. And he went over on the port side and saw that the ship came on, people came on, Nimitz took them round to the starboard side and passed right by where I was, but they didn't stop and say hello. Went up the ladder to the surrender deck. And then I got the Admiral's barge and the captain's gig to go to pick up the Japanese. And we picked them up and brought them up to where I And we had to have a little concern because the Shigemitsu, who was the prime minister, was at a peg leg. And it wasn't just a prosthesis, it was a peg. So we had to get him up the steps, we call them ladders. And he came up and came through my group. And I had purposely picked my 8 side boys. I have 4 side boys on each side. It's quarterdeck for people coming aboard the ship, had to come through the side. So I got the tallest guys, just to sort of emphasize that we won.
Yeah.
So then we brought them aboard and got all on the board, and then also they were met there by Admiral Nimitz and Admiral Halsey. And no, Admiral Nimitz and Halsey had already gone up to surrender deck, so we had Captain Murray, our skipper, took the Japanese and escorted them up to it. And they had the surrender table there, which, you know, you might think that for an auspicious occasion like that, they'd have some mahogany special built. But it's just one mess table, so the eating space that people ate all the time. It had the green cover on it. And the Japanese were told to sit down, and MacArthur proceeded to read the orders. They made a little talk that the war had settled the differences, and they hoped that the differences would be settled, and this would stop future wars and all that sort of stuff. And it lasted about 9 minutes, and then he said, this meeting is over. And at that time, prearranged, they had all these fine fortress and planes just blocking the sky. And as the Japanese were going down the ladder, leaving the ship, that's what they had to see. The story goes that as MacArthur ended his part, he turned to Halsey and said, "Where are the damn planes?" and Halsey said, "They're here." And so, but that was the most impressive sight I had ever been part of. I mean, here I had seen the war from before the beginning, through a number of perilous talks where we really didn't know that we were going to win. And we had many thoughts along the way in 42 that what do we do if we lose this war? And then to see it over and to see that we were victorious. And to think that this will set society on a high pedestal it's never seen before. We've won a war, we haven't taken any land, we will continue to thrive, and then to look around and see all these admirals and generals from all over the world. We used to get these little Time magazines in the mail out there, and that's what we agreed to keep up with the news. And so always they had on the cover some commander somewhere. And so to me, my thought was, gee, that looks like the whole smorgasbord, more or less, of these pictures. But it was momentous.
Did you realize at the time how momentous it really was?
Well, no, I didn't, but it was just all I could take in. And it was just I thought it was such a grand occasion. Then we, I guess the next day, I finished writing the log for the 8 to 12 watch, and in that log, just put all the people that had been there. And you do it by time. At 9, 12, Admiral so-and-so came aboard. At 09, 13, Admiral so-and-so. So all of those are listed.
Where's that log now?
It's in the Truman Library. I was in Kansas City one cold February day on a business trip, and I thought, gee, I'm gonna go, I wanna see the Truman Library. I didn't know the library was there. But I had heard that they had built a special part of the library called the Missouri Annex. And so I put on my heavy overcoat, got a cab, drove to Independence, and I went to the Truman section. And I saw this enclosed glass case, and so I went over and looked down, and there was the original log. And my signature.
Gosh.
And there's nobody in there except a guard. And so I beckoned to her, I said, "Come." And I said, this is the end of World War II, and this is the log, and that's my signature. So all of a sudden I became a celebrity.
I'm sure you did.
He got some people and brought him in. I got to meet him. I've been back there once to talk about this.
I have a question about
Yeah.
I guess the atmosphere around the surrender ceremony, and I've heard this asked, but I've never heard the answer. Were the sailors given any instructions on how to act, what not to do, what to do? Because I've seen the picture where they're all there.
No, except the ones that were in my group, you know, I said, I gave them the plan. But just, you know, we may have made some remarks. Don't snafu. Well, my job was, I wasn't in on all the plans, but my responsibility was to see that it went all right.
Yeah.
And it did.
Obviously did.
I was lucky. But
I have two questions backing up a little bit. Just I want to be sure to get this in your story. You had mentioned your family coming down. When did you get married and have your child? Approximately.
Between, on my way up to Newport, no, I had a child then, let's see. When we went from, came back from the Pacific and ended up going to Mediterranean, I was home for 90, for a month's leave, and this was in January of '43. I got married, and I was out in the Pacific somewhere when my child was born. They said sailors didn't have to be there for the launching, just for laying the keel. So it was, when I got home at the end of the war, I had family.
And one other question. You were on the Missouri when the bombs were dropped and when you heard that the war was formally over. Describe the atmosphere and the joy or whatever
Yeah, it was
occurred.
almost indescribable because it was real relief. You know, we thought, well, we won, the war's over. It wasn't quite as dramatic as the scene where the pageantry and everything occurred. But first it was always over. And then we, in getting ready, they brought a Japanese river pilot out, sea pilot. He had to help us get into Tokyo Bay because we knew where the mines were that we'd put there, but we didn't know where their mines were. So we had this Japanese aboard our ship for a couple of days. And he was up on the bridge. And he spoke perfect English.
Huh.
And I let him use my sea cabin. I had a sea cabin on the port side, the captain had his sea cabin on the stern. So I let Mr. Moto, we call him, use my sea cabin, and I went back down below. But we asked him, you know, one of the things that just amazed me was how overnight we went having a relationship with people from being wanting to kill you to being out there.
Huh.
I mean, just 180-degree change.
Really?
And so we enjoyed talking to Mr. Moto. I remember we asked him, he said, now, do you think there are any poor losers? I mean, are we going to still have trouble trying to go to shore and, because we've got some of these occupation folks? He says, oh, no. The Emperor says, oh, it's over. And that turned out to be true.
So you had no problems once you,
No
Out
problem. So we sent a little task force ashore. And I remember a friend of mine, Matusik, I talked to him later. He said, we were so surprised. Here we were landing on the shores of Japan. And this was before we signed the documents. But after the 15th of August, when the Emperor said, we quit. And he said, we landed and we practically had our knives in our teeth and we climbed the hill and looked up there and the Japanese with cameras. Also, take our picture.
really?
And they said there was absolutely no resistance.
Gosh.
Now, there may have been some somewhere isolated, but generally they were through. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah, we're pleased to have Frank Luton, who is a friend of Mr. Starnes here. And Frank, I think you have a question?
What time of day did the surrender ceremonies take place?
9 o'clock. 9 a.m.
9 a.m. After the ceremonies, did everybody go to lunch? Or did they bring lunch on the surrender deck?
No,
Or or everybody just leave?
everybody, as I recall, everybody just left. The Japanese were on their board about 15 minutes. The destroyers were taking the paparazzi off and the allies off, and what they did, I don't know. You know, whether they went ashore and had a big beer bath or something. I had to watch until 12 o'clock, and I'm sure after that I went down to the wardroom and had something to eat or something. But the ship was pretty well back to normal by that evening, as I recall. That was a few years ago.
So you had the 8 a.m. to noon watch.
Right. That's when it happened. You know, I have joked about, and this is not of any significance, but our friend that lives here, Dutch Van Kirk, who navigated the Enola Gay, and he wrote a log. And after the war, he was smarter than I was. He sold his log at auction. And according to Dutch, he got about $300,000. And of course, I joked about it. So my log wasn't my possession to sell, but it ended up in the Truman Library. But it was interesting, and came back home.
Okay, so you came back home. Did you, after the surrender, within a certain amount of time, did you start heading back to the United States?
Yes, we left Tokyo Bay in a day or two and went to Guam. And we may have stayed in Guam a couple of days, and then we headed back through the Pacific. We, all of us had points that we had time in service and things like that. And so many points you could take in active duty. And so I knew immediately that I had plenty of points. And so my plan was to get out. But 14th of October was Navy Day, and they wanted to have President Truman aboard that day and so forth. So I stayed in till that time. And then I got out and had 30 days leave. So,
Well, give us a little summary of what you did after you got out in your life.
well, I was just thinking of an old joke, but I won't tell that. Well, I went home, and I knew that I wanted to go back to school, but I didn't want to go back right then. And so I had been 2 years at Emory. And I hung around Emory a little bit and decided I wanted to go to law school. And generally speaking, they needed 3 years of college before you could go to law school. And then 1 year in law school, you get a combined degree. But they gave me credit for a year, Emory did, for knocking around in the Navy for 5 years. So I entered the law school of law, and they were just starting a night school, because that's the only way I could have done it, because I had to support a family. So I went to night school for 3 years, got my law degree, and then I found out that the lawyers didn't pay. That's where the word practice comes from. And so I didn't want to just go with any lawyer, but I had several offers from well-known firms, but all they could do is give me a desk and throw me some business. But I didn't want to do that. So I made a choice to see what real estate was like. And that was another fairly quick choice. My wife and I were living with her parents, and he had indicated to me that if we wanted to buy a house, he'd help me with a down payment. I think he wanted to get us out. But anyway, one Sunday we looked at an ad and went out and bought a house that Sunday. Not close to him, because I was going to law school. And I thought, I had been there, and I thought, gee, I took up a man's time about 5 hours one day, and look how much money he made. And so that put me that way. And I spent a life in real estate finance, real estate construction. And I ended up at the end of my career as president, chairman, chief executive officer of the real estate bank, what is now the Bank of America. It was at North Carolina National Bank in Charlotte at the time.
NCNB.
And so it's been a wonderful journey.
Well, you've had an amazing life, and you're still having an amazing
I
life.
still am, yes, in many ways.
Before I wrap up, I want to be sure that Frank and Tony don't have any questions.
No, that's,
But I can't tell you how much we appreciate you doing this. I mean, your story's amazing. I mean,
Well, I'm glad to do it.
and you,
I have fun doing it. You said it's something in one of your letters that if I had anything I wanted to give you or show you in addition to that, you'd be glad to do it. I'm in many, many pictures of the surrender, but you never can tell where I am. But there is one picture that came out of Google or something that shows where I am and who I am, and
oh, that's good. I was hoping you'd have something like that.
have that if you want.
Yeah.
oh, okay, great. What we do is we record it like a still. And that's you with the binoculars,
Yeah,
taking the salute of...
yeah, take a salute of Admiral Byrd
Right
Yeah,
there?
Yes.
off to the deck. I was 24 years old.
Well, you know, you had a view of this that very few people had. I
Did you
mean,
get what you want?
If you,
That's it.
could we keep that?
Yeah.
That's great.
oh, good.
Also, a thing that I've had a lot of fun with is one picture of Admiral Nimitz coming up the ladder toward the surrender table, followed by Admiral Halsey. And then below that, you can see me. So I've had that picture labeled, and it's Nimitz, Halsey, Starnes. And somebody saw that one day and gave me a poem that had been written by Captain Beecher, and read at the Adolphus Hotel in Dallas by Admiral Nimitz. And so when I make a talk, I generally close with this.
We'd like you to read it
Well,
now if you could.
yeah.
Okay.
This is Nimitz, Halsey, and me. And it goes on to say, Paddy McCoy, an American boy, left his home in the old Lone Star State. He set out to sea in a shiny DD, and he wound up in Task Force 38. He cruised for a while with a satisfied smile, then he took his pencil in hand. And here's what he wrote in a well-censored note to the folks back in stateside land. Me and Halsey and Nimitz have sure got the Japs on the run. We've driven them wacky, and old Nagasaki was setting the damn rising sun. Kyushu and Kobe and Kuri are wonderful ruins to see. We've got them like gophers are seeking a hole. The way they burrow is good for the soul, and everything out here is under control by Nimitz and Halsey and me. Me and Halsey and Nimitz are having a wonderful time. What we ain't uprooting by bombing and shooting would fit on the face of a dime. They say they're a face-saving nation, and that may be true as can be. They're taking a pushing all over the place. We're giving them arsenic minus of a waste. They're getting a kicking, but not in the face, from Nimitz and Halsey and me. Me and Halsey and Nimitz are anchored in Tokyo Bay. The place is just dripping American shipping. They stretch for a hell of a way. We hear that the fighting is finished, and that is the way it should be. Remember Pearl Harbor? They started then. We are warning them never to start it again, for we have a country with millions of men, like Nimitz and Halsey and me.
That's a classic.
Very good.
That is a classic.
If you want a copy of it?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a lot of people ask for this when I come back.
Well, I just want to thank you, and we all want to thank you for your service to the
Well,
country.
I enjoyed it. We used about all our time, didn't we?
Well, it was time well used, because you have an amazing story, and once again, thanks for what you did and your part in winning the war and what you've done since the war. It's an honor to have been able to meet you.
It's been an interesting journey.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe you know my friends from the Sandy Springs Rotary Club, David Champa and